been breaking my back, already packing my bags. Punch that time card like a ticket out of here.
Welcome to this episode of Entrepreneurs Next Door podcast. From maitre d' to dog trainer to violin instructor. Mitch's journey to downtown Haddonfield definitely has some twists and turns, but his passion for instruction does set him apart. Please enjoy this episode. This is Barry Hoover with the Entrepreneurs Next Door podcast, and I'm here with Mitch from Violins and Guitars by Mitchell. And so first things first, thank you.
Thank you. I'm really happy to see you guys. We're sitting in one of my favorite spots, which is my studio. My studio is used to teach students how to play the guitar, how to play the violin, how to play the ukulele, and it's pretty neat. Pretty neat. This is the last place I thought I would ever be 17 years ago. When I was in my mid to late 40s, I decided to learn to play a musical instrument every year or two.
I got to jump right in. So, mid-40s, you make a call to learn instruments. Did you have a bass instrument already?
That's correct. Yes, I've always been a piano player. And I ran the circuit. I had a band. I played in restaurants. I did the assisted living circuit. And I became a pretty good player. So my first instrument was the clarinet. I learned how to play it. It was interesting. And then I went to the saxophone. Then I went to the trumpet. And I played the trumpet pretty seriously, pretty well for a couple of years. And then it was time for something new, so I decided on the violin. And I went to the Courier Post to look for musical instruments. I found a violin. I went to Pennsauken and looked at it. I bought it. I went to the old Haddonfield music store to look for a teacher. And they gave me a whole book full of teachers. And randomly I picked a teacher and called him, young man. And he started to teach me how to play the violin. And I loved it. It was just the greatest instrument. Luckily, I could already read music, so that was one part that I didn't have to even bother with. But to play the violin, to learn to get the tone, to learn how to bow, to learn the essence of the instrument, it was extremely interesting and gratifying. So after a couple of months, I decided I really liked it and I wanted to get a better violin. So I put an ad in the Courier Post, and the first person that called and came to my house purchased the violin. And it happened to be a weekend, and after he left, the phone rang and rang and rang, and the next day it rang and rang, and it dawned on me, if I had 10 of these, I could sell them. So I went online and I started to fish around as to where I could get violins. And I ordered 3 right from China and put the ad back in the paper, and I sold them immediately. Then I ordered 3 more. Then I ordered 6 more, and each order sold right away from a 2-line ad in the newspaper. So I said to my teacher, there's got to be a need for these student grade violins. I think I might want to open a store, just like that, because I was in a totally different business.
What were you before?
I was in the dog training business for 20 years, and it was very, very lucrative. I enjoyed it, but I was pretty burnt out because I would go from house to house all day long. So I started looking around for a store, and I posed to this young violin teacher as to whether he'd like to be a teacher in my violin store, and I didn't know anything about retail. I didn't even know how to put strings on a violin. So I started to fish around Haddonfield because it was the only town I wanted to open in, nowhere else. And I found a store on King's Court, little tiny store. And I hemmed and hawed, and I wasn't sure. And I was home one day, and my wife called, and she was at Gracie's having ice cream. And she said, "There's people looking at that store. If you want it, go get it." And I did. I rented the store. I fixed it up. I ordered violins from one wholesaler. They were all the same brand. And slowly but surely started to sell the violins. And somebody would come in and ask for a string to be put on, and I did it. They asked for a new tuner to be put on, and I did it. And over the months and years, I learned how to fix violins, which is one of my favorite things to do. Working with the wood is really gratifying. So we did well there. My teacher, Rob Bradshaw, built up a good clientele. At the time, I wasn't teaching. I wasn't good enough. But I kept practicing and kept practicing. And eventually, I started taking on students very slowly. So we outgrew that little store after 6 years. And we started to look for a larger spot, which we found. And we moved. And we were there for about 4 years. And then it's funny in business. Rob and I kind of developed different ways of doing things. We weren't partners. We just shared the space. So I left and came to where I am right now and learned even more how to play the violin, how to play the guitar, how to play the ukulele. And I practiced and started taking on students slowly. And now I'm doing more teaching than retail. I sell guitars, I sell violins, I sell ukes, but teaching is where it's at. And it's just so much fun, so gratifying to take a youngster and teach them how to play. It's even more gratifying to take an adult and teach them how to play, because it's usually something they always wanted to do and just never had the chance. And when they start playing, it's just wonderful.
And I think that is where the unique part of your story is so evident, because you can speak directly into that situation because that was you, right? Like at mid-40s, you decided to pick up more instruments. I know there was bass instruments.
That's exactly right. And of course, when you teach, the line that teachers use all the time, if they're not really good at their instrument, is just stay a page or two ahead of the student in the book. And sometimes that's true, but at this point, I'm pretty far above my students. I can teach. And I'm proud of it. And here I am, 17 years later, doing what I do and having a blast.
That's amazing. There was one other nugget in there that I would love to hear your perspective on is your business model or your approach to it actually has evolved a little bit. When you said it was primarily retail at the beginning and has evolved into the teaching, what goes into that? Having the chance to look back, like what went into that evolving, like being open to that?
Right. Well, first of all, the first store was strictly violins. And I remember some friends of mine happened to come into the store and said, "Can you make a living doing this?" And I said, "Yeah, not a problem. I can do it." And then I started to expand a little bit, and I did violas, and then I did cellos. And over the years, what has happened is Amazon has really hurt mom and pops. Really hurt mom and pops. I used to sell a ton of guitars, and now I only sell a couple. Same thing with the ukes and the fiddles. So the alternative is to push to the teaching,
Right.
because you can't get teaching online.
Right.
So I'm still selling instruments, not a problem, just not as many, but I'm staying afloat because I'm teaching. I also have 2 other teachers that are teaching here because I just can't handle all of these students. So that's how all that happens. Slowly but surely, online sales have really hurt me. Ask a lot of folks in this town. They'll tell you the same thing, unless they have something unique, like something good to eat or an interesting instrument to learn how to play.
Right. Before I move on to some other points we had, I can tell from your story you have vision, right? Like to have a business for 20 years, but to have vision for, hey, there's a need there, and what's your vision for, just say the next like 5-10 years? Your store specifically, but the area, like the mom and pop feel, like what do you see?
Well, my vision, without question, is to expand the teaching aspect. There's things that I'm kicking around right now that will give me, hopefully, more students. And if I sell guitars or violins, that's great. And if I don't, not a big deal. I really see the future is in teaching, without question.
Without question. So cool. Your entrepreneurial spirit, as we heard, did start early. And would you say being an entrepreneur is a calling on your life?
I didn't think it was at first. It was switching gears for me when I opened up my first little shop because I was pretty burnt out with my dog training business. So it was something to do, a place to go, a place to try to make a living. But once I started teaching, and as I said before, saw the joy in these people, whether they're youngsters or oldsters, that to me is everything. It really is more important at this point than the money. It's just such a wonderful feeling, and I really get off on it. It's great.
At this season now that you're in, still in it, and having vision for the future, this answer to this next question could be different next time we sit down in a couple of years. But right now, what is success to you?
Success to me is exactly what just happened this past back-to-school season, and thank goodness it's happened for many years. The moms in this town support my store. The moms talk, and instead of going to the retailers that most of the schools recommend, they come and see me to rent their violins. And I couldn't tell you how busy I've been the past 3, maybe 4 weeks. That's my whole year, renting violins to these kids. Hundreds of them go out the door every year. And then they come back, I refurbished them and put them out again. And it's all because of the support I get from this town. And I tell the moms, I thank them. I'm grateful that they refer me to their friends or come back to me when their next child is old enough to start playing. So that, to me, is success. People that just come here without seeing an ad, without being coaxed. They just come here for a fair shake and a good product. It's great.
And if we could pretty much, we'll land the plane with this last topic here, because you hit on it a couple different times, and I'm picking up on it being a theme with some of the places we've been talking to here in town, that face-to-face interaction is elevated more and more as we get more with on-demand type things, with the Amazons of the world. It's amazing to hear that theme of face-to-face interaction, setting people apart. That's a broad topic. I know it's important to you. Could you share your heart on why it's important?
Yeah, it's extremely important. I bend over backwards for any customer that walks through my door. But the local folks, the Haddonfield folks, they are, this time of year especially, my priority. And I do whatever I can to make these people happy. And it pays off.
Big time. Awesome. Mitch, I want to say thank you again. I think your story resonates with a lot of people, especially with, I'm telling you, that mid-40s, still having a desire to learn and to step out and have some boldness and some courage to learn something new, and then have it turn into, right, a business in and of itself is incredible. So we want to say thank you for being on. Your story is important.
Well, and thank you. It was really neat and fun.